Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Historical Museum. I'm Daisha Harwood, Executive Director of this beautiful and gorgeous place. And thank you guys for deciding to spend your Wednesday evening with us. We appreciate that. So first of all, I just want to ask in the audience, who are members? Such a good group. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. I want to also mention that one of our trustees is here, Sheila Snow. So thank you guys so much. Just a couple quick announcements. Please come back next Thursday, the 6th, for the opening of our exhibition, Memories of Mountain Drive. It's about Santa Barbara's bohemian community in the 1950s and 60s. It will be fun, a little different for us, and we'll be open for first Thursday, this coming Thursday, and then through February. Additionally, through November 13th, we've got Take a Hike, Save the World. If you guys haven't seen that, you can also check that out tonight. That is on view, and that's part of our collaborative series through the Santa Barbara Museum's Environmental Alliance. We have several events coming up. If you are not members, make sure to become a member, and also make sure and check your email, make sure you're on our email list, and if all else fails, please go on our website, sbhistorical.org. We have a few exciting events coming up, including a presentation on October 11th by Sojourner Kincaid Roll on her book, Free at Last, a Juneteenth poem. That's co-hosted by Women's Literary Voices. We also have a couple nights of haunted tours by Neil Graffey, just in time for Halloween. And later this year, we'll be screening Better Together, a presentation on the Mission Trails system, and we'll be opening up an exhibition of Clarence Mattey's artwork just in time for Mattey's Tavern to also open, by the way. So please do connect with us. If you guys have any questions about membership, Jeannie Buchanan is in the back, and our front desk staff can help as well. I want to just say a quick thank you to my team. They've been incredible, especially through this hot weather, of getting everything set up, so thank you guys. And now, without further ado, Betsy J. Green has been a writer for more than 25 years. She is a frequent speaker here at the museum, and I should say a frequent researcher in our library as well. As a freelancer, she contributed to articles in newspapers in the US and abroad. She specializes in local history, architecture, and the environment. And I highly recommend that you read her article in The Independent. It's called The Great House Detective. She's authored many books, which I have to plug are for sale in our museum store, including the book that she authored that she'll be talking about tonight. So everybody, please welcome Betsy J. Green.
Good evening, everyone. How's my sound out there? Oh, okay, good. All right, this was one of my COVID lockdown projects. Everything was closed down except the internet, and that stayed open. If the internet had closed, I'd probably have to stay home and read books or something, I don't know. I started doing research in the 19-teens when I wrote my series of Way Back When books about Santa Barbara in the 19-teens, and I kept seeing references to Flying A filming movies here, and I was kind of curious about, whoops, I'm touching things here, curious about what exactly had been filmed in Montecito. Flying movie or silent movie people went to Montecito to use not a friend of mine, obviously. They use the mansions as far off locations such as ancient Rome or France in the time of Louis XIV or something. Put this down. Must be, all right. Who paid him? All right. Yeah. Today, Montecito is home to media celebrities and even British royalty. Their mansions are hidden behind tall hedges, long driveways, and locked gates. But a century ago, the welcome mat was out for actors and film crews making movies that were set in tropical islands, ancient Rome, France in the 1500s, etc. More than 60 silent movies were created by dozens of film studios in the luxurious estates of Montecito during the 19-teens and 20s. On the cover of the book, and they're all over here, I have a picture of one of the movies that was filmed at the first Bellasguardo estate. The estate that is there now is Bellasguardo version 2.0, but this was the first one. And there's also a picture from the movie that was filmed there called The Envoy Extraordinary, and if you look closely, you can see where the actors were actually standing. So why did the Hollywood movie studios come to the Santa Barbara area? In the early years of filming, before years of big budgets, it was more cost-effective to find an existing mansion than to build one. So sit back and relax while I give you a brief rundown on some of the movies filmed at the $1 Million Mansions of Montecito. There are about 65 movies covered in the book, but I only have time to talk about half of them, and there are also 450 images in the book. Here are a few of the mansions where silent movies were filmed. Bellasguardo was owned by the Graham family. That was the first Bellasguardo. The El Ferradis mansion was owned by James Waldron Gillespie. Arcady was owned by the Knapp family, and Pierenhurst owned by the Bothine family. The New Faith. I was surprised to find that the earliest commercial movie made in Montecito had a religious theme. This 1911 film features men wearing sandals and skirts. A Roman patrician named Caius Valerius is intrigued by a slave girl who is a Christian, which is what the New Faith is all about. When she saves his life by pulling a tarantula off his neck, he falls for her and her religion. So he invites her to shack up with him. She admits she loves him, but declines his kind offer of an extramarital relationship. Somehow, that makes him love her even more. Next, he asks her to marry him, but before they can find a priest and do the right thing, they are both killed by some nasty Roman patricians. As the movie ends, they die in each other's arms. This one-reel movie was filmed by the Selig Polyscope Company at the Gillespie Estate, the most popular movie location in Montecito, and a reel is about 10 minutes long. In the days of Trajan, it's back to ancient Rome with men in sandals and skirts in this two-reel movie made in 1913. Trajan is the emperor of Rome, and he feels that if you aren't with him, you are against him. So, when some royal folk from another kingdom refuse to swear allegiance to him, he has a hissy fit. In this case, since it's ancient Rome, the victims of the emperor's wrath are sent to the arena to fight each other to the death. I guess that's better than battling a lion. And in this case, it definitely is, because the two guys fighting each other decide to join forces and attack the emperor in the stands. Ha! They are not successful, and you can bet this does not improve the emperor's disposition. Later, however, the two guys get on His Highness's nice list when they manage to fight off the nasty Huns who are invading Rome. So all is forgiven, and the movie ends happily, although they never do have an orgy. Trapped in a forest fire. In the years before studios had big budgets for special effects, movie crews improvised to take advantage of natural disasters such as fires and floods. One day in 1913, the folks at Flying A noticed a cloud of smoke toward the mountains. The local paper reported, at first they thought it was a building in the city, but decided to take advantage of it for a moving picture scene. All available players were secured. The journey brought them to the fire, and as the imaginations worked quickly, the players were sent through some exciting stuff, with the flames and smoke serving as settings, all of which will be made part of a photo play still to be constructed. So here's the story. This is another movie in which an incredible amount of action is crammed into a one-reel film. A group of young people is at a hunting lodge, and each of them seems to be in love with someone who loves someone else. Everyone is trying to kindle a spark, but without results, until someone throws a smoldering cigarette butt onto some dry leaves. Fire, people are missing, people are rescued, people fall in love. The most notable part of the movie is that the studio rushed up to the hills above Santa Barbara to film a forest fire, had some actors run around amidst the flames, and then built a story around it. The expression, "don't worry, it's only a movie," doesn't apply here. The fire was very real, and some of the cameramen were overcome by smoke in making this one reel movie in 1913. The Cricket on the Hearth. This 1914 two-reel movie has both a mistaken identity crisis, thanks to a character in disguise, and a misunderstanding at its core. Sounds complicated, but most audiences at the time were probably familiar with Charles Dickens' novel, The Cricket on the Hearth. Both the disguise and the misunderstanding threaten a couple's happy home. We know it's a happy home because they have a cricket chirping on the hearth. How the chirping doesn't keep them up at night is not explained. There's a marriage of convenience that almost happens, but is thwarted in the nick of time, and by the end of the film, everyone is as happy as a cricket on the hearth. The Flying A director told the local paper, "The rector was very kind in allowing the exterior of the church to be pictured, but is rather proud of the fact that he has never seen a motion picture. I invited him to the studio at the time we ran the print, but he refused and said he had no curiosity on the subject." And this was filmed at the All Saints by the Sea Church in Montecito. The Envoy Extraordinary. This is a 5-reel moving picture produced by a short-lived local film company known as the SB. 5 reels was a major accomplishment for a movie in 1914. It was filmed at 4 separate Montecito estates. This film takes place among the diplomatic and ruling classes of Europe 2 years in the future and unwittingly predicts World War I. Some wealthy residents of Montecito financed this film, and, quelle surprise, they appear in the movie dressed as European royalty. There is the usual romance and intrigue, plus a polo game, and an honest-to-goodness German baron plays a German baron in the film. Someone climbs a cliff, someone walks the plank, but in the end, ho-hum, the hero and heroine tie the knot. The assistant cameraman was Victor Fleming, who later went on to direct The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. So, okay, thank you. Give that lady a free ticket, right? The Power of Light. Here's another movie with a religious theme. A 2-reeler created by the Flying A in 1914. Like Father, Like Son doesn't hold water in this movie about moonshiners in the boonies. The father wants his son to follow in his footsteps in the illegal hooch business, but his son wants an education. Even worse, instead of choosing something useful like automobile repair or accounting, Sonny Boy decides to become a minister. So here we have the first problem of the movie. Then, of course, we have the love interest, and this also presents a problem. 2 young ladies are vying for the young man's attention, and he's torn between them. Maybe this young man should have chosen a career in conflict resolution. He chooses one of the young ladies, and they marry. That's one problem solved, but there's still the problem of the father with the still. The young couple returns to the North Woods to deal with the dad. In quick order, the gendarmes discover the still, the young man is shot, but he behaves so nobly that the dad sees the light and error of his ways. As the movie ends, we see the son destroying the illegal liquor equipment. But, spoiler alert, 6 years later, when Prohibition begins and the US goes dry, he may regret his rash actions. This was filmed in Sycamore Canyon. The Diamond from the Sky. This was a 30-episode serial of 1915 and is one of the Flying A's most successful productions. The Diamond from the Sky is a meteorite wrapped around a diamond that fell to Earth centuries ago and is now owned by a wealthy family in Virginia. During the course of this thrill-packed 30-part series, the diamond is lost or stolen, people are kidnapped or rescued, etc. There are gypsies, a hunchback, a yacht, a monkey, deceit and deception galore. At least 6 episodes of the 30 were filmed in Montecito. One episode was filmed near the Santa Barbara Country Club when it was located where the Academy of the West is now. A fox hunt was filmed in Montecito as well. According to the story, this episode takes place in Fairfax County, Virginia, the home of the wealthy family that inherited the diamond several generations ago. The serial also staged a plane crash in Sycamore Canyon. The Quest. This is a 5-reel adventure film produced by the Flying A in 1915. The star next to the name indicates that there are existing copies of the film. Overall, only about 14% of silent movies survive. Some scenes were filmed at a Montecito estate, and some were filmed on Santa Cruz Island. So this movie will also be in my book about silent movies filmed on the Channel Islands. This is another movie with men in sandals and skirts. The film takes place in the present day on an island that time forgot. A wealthy young man is shipwrecked and ends up on this island inhabited by folks who look like they are wearing costumes from a high school production of Julius Caesar. The daughter of the tribe's chief falls for the shipwrecked guy, but this does not escape the eye of an island guy who saw her first. Trouble. After a while, a yacht appears and approaches the island, and the shipwrecked guy plans to signal the yacht so he can make his exit and take the young lady back to civilization with him. But before he can do that, he falls asleep and has a long dream sequence. He's rescued with the young lady and returns to civilization, but she does not adjust well to big city life. His dream turns into a nightmare, and when he awakes, he realizes that island life is not so bad, so he lets the yacht sail by. He decides to spend the rest of his life with the young lady who doesn't have a problem with guys wearing skirts. The Lure of the Mask. The Flying A created this 4-reel romantic mystery in 1915. Montecito subs from Monte Carlo and Venice in this tale about a wealthy American man with plenty of time and money on his hands who is ready for adventure, especially if it involves an attractive young woman. On a foggy night, he is captivated by a woman's voice singing in Italian, but he is unable to see the singer. He meets her later under better lighting conditions, but she wears a mask over her eyes. However, apart from the eyes, everything else about her checks out molto bene. The mystery woman soon heads off to Italy and later sends the young man her mask in the mail. Che fortuna. Of course, he is on the next boat. The next time he sees her, however, she's wearing a veil and unhappily married to an Italian prince who is a total no-goodnik. There's an exciting fight at the edge of a cliff between the American guy and the nasty prince, who ends up doing a faceplant on the beach below, and he is history. After the mess on the beach is cleaned up, the new widow and her hero head to her villa, and you can guess where this story is headed. Amore. Wife Wanted. The Flying A produced this 1-reel comedy in 1915, one of their most prolific years. It was filmed at Miramar Beach. Miramar Beach represents Miramar Beach in one of the few movies where Montecito represents Montecito. He's a rich young guy in search of a wife. We know he's a rich guy because his last name is Fortune. That's easy to understand, but it's not clear why he needs to advertise for a wife. Naturally, he is flooded with replies and photos, including one from a mysterious young lady in a swimsuit who writes, "Find me." He goes to Miramar Beach in Montecito, where he dives off a pier and rescues a drowning woman in his spare time. In an amazing coincidence, Miramar is where the young lady is. If you watch enough movies, you get used to amazing coincidences like this. The young lady's dad is trying to get her married to an elderly count. Of course, she hates the count. She wants a hero who saves drowning ladies and who would also be younger than the count. Somehow, the young lady is kidnapped and the rich young guy saves her, and another of those gosh darn coincidences, he recognizes her as the mysterious Find Me girl. Purity. This is a 7-reel allegorical drama created by the Flying A in 1916. The star of this movie was famous for posing au naturel for sculptors, so you can guess what happens in this film. To give the appearance that this is an art film and not porn, the movie begins with a scene from Greek mythology showing Pandora opening a box and letting evil escape into the world. This is also an excuse for actresses to traipse around in flimsy costumes that you know their mothers would disapprove of. Then the movie switches to the present day. A girl named Purity is in love with a penniless poet. He can't afford to self-publish his poetry, so Purity decides to earn some money for him. Lacking in education and marketable skills, she decides to take off her clothes and pose nude for sculptors and artists. This is a pre-code movie, so she really does take it all off, for art's sake, mind you. The poet boyfriend is peeved when he learns about her activities au naturel and dumps her. After his book is published, however, and he becomes famous, he learns that she did it for him. He mans up and runs to find her. Fortunately, he reaches her before she has thought about putting her head in the oven. They are reunited, and another movie ends with the happy couple headed to the altar. Usually the Flying A did not mind spectators watching their filming, but they made an exception here because of the scanty costumes on the young ladies. The Garden of Allah. This was made in 1916. After 1915, the Flying A began a slow decline. They switched to making feature-length movies, and lots of actors and crew moved to the LA Hollywood area. And this was when other studios began making more movies in our area. The Garden of Allah is a 10-reel romantic tragedy produced by Selig Polyscope. This film could have been titled, What Happens in the Garden of Allah Stays in the Garden of Allah. Here goes. A man who has been a Trappist monk in a monastery for 20 years decides, and we don't know why, that he wants to live. So he goes AWOL and ends up in an oasis in the desert. We don't know why that either. In the oasis swarming with Bedouins and camel caravans, he somehow meets up with an Englishwoman who is also looking for a change of pace, so to speak. Of course, since this is a Hollywood movie, they fall in love. Somehow, he neglects to tell her that he is a monk. Oops. After they marry and she becomes pregnant, he gets religion and listens to his conscience. So he fesses up, and after much forehead thumping and bosom clutching, he re-enlists in the monastery with her permission. The Englishwoman remains the noble, suffering woman and mother-to-be, sadder but wiser, better to have loved and lost, etc. The film company originally planned to film scenes at the Santa Barbara Mission, but that didn't work out, probably considering the subject matter. Okay. This movie had a special musical score that was sent out with the movie so that local musicians could play it when the movie was shown. The Valley of Decision. The Flying A Film Studio did not shy away from controversial topics. This 1916 film about abortion begins with an allegory in which actors personify various vices. The scene then switches to an ambitious man who is aiming to become governor. When his wife becomes pregnant, he fears that having a family will derail his plans. He and his advisor convince the wife to terminate the pregnancy. She does, and is so depressed afterwards that she dies. After her death, the husband, now governor, becomes depressed and thinks of the child that might have been. The obligatory Hollywood happy ending comes when he wakes up and discovers it has all been a bad dream. What was even stranger is that there were several family members in the cast of this five-reel movie. The stars Richard Bennett and Adrienne Morrison were husband and wife, and 3 of their daughters appeared in the film, and the daughters all went on to be actresses as well. The Bottle Imp. The information for this 1907 movie was full of what I call movie magazine malarkey. It was said to be filmed in Hawaii with a genuine Hawaiian princess as the star. But no, it was filmed in Montecito, and the actress was from San Francisco. This 6-reel movie was produced by the Lasky Feature Play Company, and the folks in Hawaii were upset that it was not filmed on their island. This film could have been titled, "Be Careful What You Wish For." A poor fisherman in Hawaii falls in love with a Hawaiian princess. Problem to be solved. The fisherman goes to the mountains where he buys a magic bottle with a genie or imp inside. It's a run-of-the-mill genie who grants your wishes, so the fisherman wishes for and gets a palace and servants and marries the princess. But then problems arise. The genie dude gets mad at the fisherman and gives him leprosy. The fisherman wants to sell the bottle, but if you don't sell the bottle for less than you paid for it, the punishment is death. The story gets even more complicated after that, but somehow the nasty genie dies, a volcano erupts and destroys the fisherman's palace, and he's back to living in a thatched hut. But he still has his princess, and they're happy with their simple life on the beach. Jilted Janet. This 5-reel movie, produced in 1918, is the last Flying A movie filmed in Montecito. The moral of the story is, if you don't have a mansion, just borrow one. The plot revolves around Janet, who owns a lemon grove that turns out to be a real lemon. To make matters worse, her fiancé dumps her, that's the jilt, for a girlfriend of hers who has more money. Does this discourage Janet? Nope. She doesn't have much money, but she has plenty of moxie. She invites the fiancé and his bride to visit her at her estate. She convinces the caretaker of a large estate to let her borrow the estate for one night, while the owner, a bachelor, is out of town. You can probably guess what happens next. While Janet is entertaining in grand style at the mansion, the owner shows up unexpectedly. He joins in the game, however, by pretending to be the butler. After the guests leave, the estate's owner confronts Janet. "You stole my house," he says. But we all know that she has also stolen his heart. The movie was filmed at the first Bellasguardo mansion. A Diplomatic Mansion. The Vitagraph studio filmed this 5-reel movie at the Gillespie estate in 1918 during World War I. A young American man looking for adventure and romance in the South Seas finds a whole lot more than he bargained for. First, he meets an English woman, and guess what happens? They fall in love. When someone insults her, he gets into a fight and has to move to another island. His new island, called Platina, is threatened by a German agent who is trying to encourage the island natives to attack the British folks and seize the platinum mines. In the midst of the chaos on the island, the beautiful Englishwoman turns up and gets mixed into the mess. She needs rescuing, and of course, the young American saves her with the help of a US warship. Hooray! Stella Maris. This 1918 film features Mary Pickford, one of the biggest stars of the silent era. I discovered it accidentally while I was just watching this movie for fun and recognized the location that you see here. The lives of 2 young women come together by way of a man who is loved by both of them. One is a rich young lady who is crippled. The other is an orphan who lives in a grim asylum. The man's wife is an abusive drug addict. He visits the rich woman, who is a distant cousin, falls in love with her, and leaves his wife. His wife then takes the orphan to work for her as a servant and is abusive to her as well. When she beats the orphan unconscious, the man adopts the orphan out of pity. Eventually, the rich woman is cured and able to walk. She then discovers that the man she loves is married. In the end, the orphan solves everyone's problem when she kills the abusive woman and commits suicide. The movie ends happily as the rich woman and the man come together at last. Lord and Lady Algy. Goldwyn Studios filmed this 5-reel domestic comedy in 1919. It was filmed at several Montecito estates. The first few years that movies were filmed in Montecito, the publicity usually mentioned the name of the estate or estates. But as the years went by, the estate names were often not mentioned. So here's the story. Lord Algy can't seem to stop gambling, even though it looks as though his habit will ruin his marriage to Lady Algy. When he bets everything he has on a horse at the Grand Derby, or Derby, his wife walks out. But then she bets everything she has on a different horse in the same race. And just to make things interesting, she doesn't tell her husband. A big race day comes. Lord Algy's horse doesn't win, but Lady Algy's horse does. Supposedly, this teaches Lord Algy a lesson. But will he stop gambling? I wouldn't bet on it. Our Better Selves. This is a 5-reel war drama created by the Astra Film Company at the Arcady Estate in 1919. Most of the movies made in Montecito have happy or happily ever after endings. This is one of the exceptions. A husband and wife from the upper class in France cast their frivolous pastimes aside when Germany invades France. The husband joins the resistance as a spy. The wife is reluctant to become involved until her husband is wounded and hides out in a convent. The wife dons a nun's habit and helps conceal him when the Germans track him to the convent. She overhears the Germans' plans to bomb the Allied troops and manages to blow up a bunch of Germans. As a result, both she and the husband are killed. But wait, there's more. The movie ends with their souls crossing the river Styx together. Life after death was a common subject at this time in history, as people tried to cope with all the deaths from World War I and the Spanish flu. A couple of other films made in Montecito have a similar theme. The Better Wife. This 5-reel movie was filmed at several Montecito estates in 1919 by the Select Picture Studio. The title does a pretty good job of describing the main story. A rich man has a wife who cheats on him, but he's not aware of it. She's killed in an auto accident, leaving him with the young son who was injured in the accident. An heiress bonds with the son and becomes his nurse. The boy's dad marries her eventually when he loses his fortune. So it's a marriage of convenience for him, but she loves him anyway, even though he is still in love with wife number 1. Life improves all around when the husband learns of his late wife's infidelities. He realizes that wife number 2 is the better wife. Better late than never, I guess. A newspaper in Alabama ran a whole series of ads built on the film's title. There's an ad for a soft drink, bread, oil stove, and a vacuum cleaner. As We Forgive. This 3-reel 1920 film is one of the 7 religious movies filmed in Montecito. It was produced by a studio called the Historical Film Corporation. It was filmed at the El Foradis estate. A young man is engaged to his boss's daughter, but he royally screws up his life by embezzling from the company. He's caught, serves time, and is released. After prison, he starts attending church and meets a minister who takes an interest in him. The reverend encourages him to apologize to his ex-boss and ask his forgiveness. The young man gets a cool reception from the boss until the minister tells a story from the Bible about forgiveness. The Epistle of Paul the Apostle to Philemon. So, you know what that means? It's sandals and skirts time. The flashback illustrates a biblical tale of forgiveness. The ex-boss does the right thing and even rehires the ex-con. However, I hope he schedules frequent auditing of the books. This is another movie with the happily ever after ending because the boss's daughter also lets the ex-con back into her life. Phantom Melody. This is a 6-reel horror film made at the El Foredice estate by Universal Pictures in 1920. It's another film that deals with life after death. This film is set in a mansion in Italy during World War I. It's the eternal triangle all over again. 2 men love the same woman. However, this story is livened up, so to speak, by one of the men being buried alive by his rival. But no problema. The guy who is buried alive somehow manages to escape from his coffin, although the trauma has turned his hair white and nobody recognizes him when he returns. In the meantime, his rival escapes the draft by tricking another guy to go in his place. So if we weren't sure that the rival was non buono because he buried someone alive, now we know he's also a draft dodger. And yet somehow he tricks the woman into thinking he is Mr. Nice Guy. The back from the dead guy becomes a music teacher in the mansion where she lives and is able to observe all of this undetected. Everything turns out molto bene when the woman learns that the rival is a coward. The back from the dead guy plays a song that causes the woman to recognize him. And then they finally pair up at the end of the movie, just as the credits start to roll. For the first time in his career, the maker of caskets was able to get the views of the user of his product. The undertaker asked the actor for a photograph of himself in the coffin with a testimonial to be used in advertisements. The actor obliged him with the picture requested, inscribed as follows: "Having used your coffin, I have found it so delightful that I hope to use no other for many years to come." Two Wise Wives. This 5-reel movie was filmed at an unidentified Montecito mansion by famous players Lasky in 1921. It was directed by Lois Weber, a famous female director. This is the second movie that she filmed here. This film was directed by a woman, so it's not surprising that the 2 wives are the focus. What is surprising is that both women are, despite the title, downright clueless. Wifey number 1 married for love, but tries too hard to please her hubby number 1. She gets pouty when he spills ashes on her nice, clean carpet, and then gets tearful when he's reluctant to wear the slippers that she crocheted just for him. Wifey number 2 married for money, and oh, by the way, she's the ex-girlfriend of wifey number 1. Complication here, since wifey number 2 still has the hots for her ex-boyfriend. Wifey number 1 knows about the ex-girlfriend, is jealous because she reads her hubby's mail when she isn't keeping house spotless or crocheting slippers. And then, wouldn't you know it, both couples end up spending the weekend together. Wifey number 2 makes a play for hubby number 1, which was called Vamping back then. He turns her down just as wife number 1 happens to enter the room. In the end, both couples come to appreciate their respective spouses, and the film ends on a happy moral note. The Beautiful Liar. This 6-reel film was produced by Preferred Pictures Corporation in 1921 at a Montecito mansion. A disguise, a mistaken identity, and not one, but 2 amazing coincidences make up this movie. A resort manager, desperate to avoid being fired, promises to get a famous Broadway actress to appear in a play at the resort. When that play falls apart, he finds a secretary who is a lookalike for the actress. He brings her to the resort and tries to pass her off as the original. That takes care of the disguise and the mistaken ID parts. The first amazing coincidence occurs when the actor in the play just happens to be the man that the secretary is in love with, her boss's son, another rich young bachelor that we encounter so often in the movies. The secretary is a hit with the audience, and the rich young bachelor proposes to her. Guess what the second amazing coincidence is? The famous Broadway actress shows up. Fortunately, this doesn't break up the happy couple, and the movie has the usual rosy conclusion. The actress in the leading role later became a Montecito resident by the name of Catherine MacDonald. The Voice from the Minaret. This is a 7-reel movie made in 1923 and filmed in part at the Bartlett Polo Club. This polo club no longer exists. The polo club was decorated to look like a polo club in India. The clubhouse for the polo club is now a private home. Norma Talmadge is the star, and Frank Lloyd is the director. He later directed, Frank Lloyd, anyway? Mutiny on the Bounty, okay, all right, with Clark Gable. Okay. The movie begins with a nasty husband, a British governor in India under the Raj, and an unhappy wife. When the wife discovers that the Gov is fooling around, she gets on the next boat for dear old England. On the boat, she meets a missionary who is bound for Damascus. They fall in love and both disembark in Damascus. But eventually, the voice from the minaret makes them feel guilty, and they end their relationship. The wife returns to the Gov in India, and they soon return to England together. Ready for an amazing coincidence? Guess who shows up as the minister of a nearby church in England? Somehow, the Gov learns of his wife's past tryst with the minister, but not to worry. The Gov pitches a fit and keels over stone dead. Problem solved. Ashes of Vengeance. Norma Talmadge and director Frank Lloyd came back a few months later in 1923 and filmed this 8-reel historical drama at the Bellasguardo estate. We travel back to the days of 16th century France, to a time when men wore tights and short pants and women wore fancy dresses, even when it wasn't Sunday. The movie starts with a duel between a nasty count and a nice guy. The nice guy wins and spares the life of the nasty count. When the massacre of the Huguenots takes place, the nasty count agrees to protect the nice guy's fiancée if the nice guy will be his servant for 5 years. I told you the count was nasty. By the way, the fiancée is not as nice as her boyfriend, and she cheats on him. While working for the count, the nice guy falls in love with the nasty count's sister. She loves him too. We know that by the way she looks at him. But she holds back because he is a servant. In the end, she decides the heck with hierarchy, and another happy couple heads to the altar. During the filming of this movie, only music from the time period was played to put the actors in the mood. East Lynne is a 9-reel movie filmed by the Fox Film Corporation in 1925. It was filmed somewhere in Montecito, which was a substitute for an estate in England. We're back in the mid-1800s. A wealthy woman, married with small children, mistakenly thinks her husband is messing around, so she leaves him and the kiddies and runs off with a rich guy who is a total louse. He soon dumps her, her face gets majorly rearranged in a train wreck, and she becomes yet another noble, suffering woman. But wait, the fates have decided that she hasn't suffered enough. She finds work as a governess for her kids in her former mansion, and no one recognizes her. She takes care of the kids she left behind, wakes up every morning regretting her past actions, and watches her former hubby with his new wife. Finally, the fates decide to give her a break, sort of. The stress and strain ruin her health. On her deathbed, she confesses all to her husband, who forgives her. Her Husband's Secret. This is another 1925 movie. This one was filmed at the Knott family estate. It's a 7-reel domestic drama produced by First National Pictures. Like Father, Like Son could have been the title of this film that involves a couple of secrets as well as an amazing coincidence. The movie opens with the prologue set in 1900 at a seaside estate featuring a married couple. The husband had a secret life that his wife was unaware of when they married. He was a sly dog, according to one movie magazine, who could pile on the charm to win over the female sex. He goes on a binge one night and brings home a bunch of rowdy companions. When his wife objects, he leaves and takes their young son with him. Fast forward 25 years, the son is a banker who is up to no good. He's also a ladies' man who manages to charm the daughter of the banker he's been bilking. And get ready for the amazing coincidence, the banker lives next door to the young man's mother. Things unravel in a hurry when his mother learns who he is and that he has inherited his father's evil ways. The young man has a change of heart and tries to atone for his sins by leaping off a cliff. Don't try this at home. Apparently, this works for him because he survives. The banker is impressed with his dramatic deed and allows his daughter to marry the young man. Another happy ending, sort of. Excuse me. This estate was on Channel Drive, and the leading actor, Antonio Moreno, refused to use a double and jumped off the cliff onto the beach himself. This was one of the last movies made in Montecito before the big 1925 earthquake. We've come now to the last silent movie filmed in Montecito. The 1928 movie OK was based on a Gershwin Broadway musical, so I'm sure that music from the show was played when the film was shown in theaters. First National Pictures produced this 5-reel film at an estate in Montecito. This movie combines mistaken identities and bootleggers during Prohibition. A lord in England wants his daughter to marry a man she hates, so she jumps on a little sailboat and heads out into the Atlantic Ocean. Why not? Anyway, during a storm, she is rescued by a ship full of rum runners headed for New York. After they land, she eludes the cops and hides in a Long Island mansion. The mansion's owner is supposed to get married the next day, but that doesn't stop him from falling in love with the Lord's daughter. Of course, he doesn't know who she is. And before the mansion owner and his fiancée can say, "I do," the cops raid the mansion for serving liquor, and the bride-to-be says, "I don't." Somehow, the police leave empty-handed, and the mansion owner and the Lord's daughter say, "I do." And so, the last silent movie made in Montecito ends happily. And so the silent era came to an end in the late 1920s. A lot of people were reluctant to say goodbye to the silence. Some folks felt, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Some people said that movie-going had been more restful when there was just live music playing during the showing of a film. Other people felt that dialogue in English limited movies' appeal. Mary Pickford famously said, "We lost the world market when we began to speak." And as they say, the rest is history. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions, comments in the back there. I can't hear you. Oh, Charlie Chaplin really had no connection to Montecito. The hotel there kind of made that up. A number of people have refuted that, and they've offered no proof that that's true. He probably stayed there at some point. A lot of movie stars came up here for R&R, and so that's the connection. Yeah. So. Sure.
Did you have the pleasure of looking at many of these films that you've described so well?
Well, a lot of what I'm talking about comes from the various summaries in the movie magazines, which were online during COVID. In the back of the book, I have about 6 movies that have survived out of the 65. In general, only about 14% of Silence All Over have survived. They were made on this film called cellulose nitrate, which was extremely flammable. You really need to store it at 30 degrees Fahrenheit, 30% humidity. Otherwise, there were a lot of amazing fires where so much was lost. But there are about 6, and some of them are on YouTube. The one, Stella Maris with Mary Pickford, I found on YouTube. So that's one you can watch. Sure. That's a good question about a 10-reel movie. A reel was about 10 minutes long. So they'd run it, and then the more advanced movie theaters had 2 projectors, so they could switch from one to the other. But otherwise, there was kind of like a 3 to 5 minute break while the guy in the projection booth took the film down. And early on, some doctors were concerned about people watching rapidly moving images, and they said maybe it was a good idea for people to rest their eyes for 5 minutes in between each reel, or they see it again. So, sure. El-Furadis, yeah, good question. El-Furadis is apparently Persian or Iranian, meaning paradise. And one article I saw from way back when said the accent is supposed to be placed on the end, Furadis, like sort of paradise in Italian, or paradis. Yeah, so, hey, sure. Oh, sure. Oh, okay, take in front here. Yeah. Pardon? Oh, Belguardo Estate. Oh, the Belguardo Estate that's there now is Belguardo version 2.0. The first one was in the same location early on. It was owned by the Graham family, and it was damaged somewhat in the earthquake. And then the Clark, thank you. The Clarks moved in and redid it, kind of in a French style, which was their thing. So, someone in the back then. Yes, the Flying A, or the American Film Company, was the one that was headquartered here in Santa Barbara from about 1912 until about 1920 or 21. The location, part of it is still there, which is interesting. It's on the corner of Mission and Chapala. Yeah, there's a little tan building there. And actually, every once in a while, every once in 5 years or something, there's a tour through there. So I've been through there a couple of times, and the first time I went there, over the dressing room doors, the numbers were still there. The second time I went, the numbers were gone. But that part of the studio is still there. And a little bit, just up the hill from there, there's a big, long church. And part of that in the back was like the administration offices. But basically, it kind of fell apart it wasn't kept up in the 1920s. And then I think in the 1940s or so, it was torn down. So bring it back, bring it back. Anyone else? Okay, I have time for signing books if anyone would like me to do that. So good question. Are the mansions open to visiting? Not usually. El-Furadis, part of it is for sale right now. Jane Pauley recently did a special there. But no, a lot of them are not open. But at the time they were. A lot of these places were the winter homes for rich people like from Chicago. So if you could afford not to live in Chicago in the winter, you'd come out and build a mansion here. And a lot of these places were like open to the public on Sunday. So quite a different from now. Yeah. All right, thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Betsy. It's such a wonderful storyteller. Just a quick reminder that our Glen Hill Library holds many items in the collection related to the Flying A and other film studios that shot here in the area, along with a lot of historic photos of the homes that Betsy mentioned tonight. And the other thing I just want to mention is that we do have a permanent portion of our Story of Santa Barbara exhibition having to do with the Flying A. So if you guys are interested in film history, please come back. Thank you so much for coming. Can I get you an actual glass of wine? I'm holding it. Oh, okay, yes. Okay, I'll just go get you another one.